Thanks a lot, everybody, for making the time to join today. Our goal today is to kind of go over the features and functionality that we're kind of adding in the new release that we're putting out next week. It's going to be version 4.2.1.4. It's not a major release, but there are some improvements, and which is the kind of the point of this session. I think half the folks on the call I know personally, and most of you know what OpenIM is about. You're already using it, and we're kind of working together, but there are quite a few people who are also kind of new to us. So we're going to start out by kind of covering what OpenIM is, the capabilities that it has, how people use it. We'll then look at the highlights of the main improvements, which are part of this 4.2.1.4 release. We'll then do a short demo and kind of walk through the product. And then at the end, we'll talk about the short-term roadmap, which is the major release that we're planning for later, I guess it'd be in the May-June timeframe. Okay. I like to keep these things interactive. So if you have questions as we go, please post them and I'll try to do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, I will try to get the answer for you as a follow-up afterwards. Okay. So that being said, in terms of what is OpenIAM and how would we describe it? So really, it's you can think of it as a unified IAM platform, which today consists of two major components. It's got an identity governance component, which does all your user lifecycle management, workflows, self-service portals, your governance and compliance activities. There's a web access management component, which is largely your single sign-on. It's your ability to federate to your target applications, right? The business applications that you use, and providing an interface which end users can use to kind of have a unified portal. Okay, and then there's this third layer, which I kind of like to refer to it as basically shared services. These are all the things which are used across the stack, and the multi-factor authentication that we're highlighting here is kind of part of that shared layer. So whether you're using workforce identity or you're using the access manager, you still have the MFA capability that's there to turn on. And we've always kind of looked at this, that you can use as much of OpenIM as you want to, or as little. And the reason for that is that, a lot of customers already have investments in one area or another. And in that respect, we want to be a complement to those existing investments that a company may have. However, if a company doesn't have those, then the option exists that all the tools are available and you can leverage them all on one platform. Right? That being said, let's go to what's in this new release. And we've kind of broken this out into a few sections. So the first one is a self-service portal, and that's really more your end user facing part. And there are a few new tools there. So one is the ability to manage contractors. And this was, the capability was there, but not as spelled out as it is today. So there are some of our customers which have a large number of contractors, and the life cycle of those people don't come from the HR system, or there's no authoritative source for them. So in that scenario, OpenIM has the ability now where you can create the contractors have workflows that are linked to them. And the manager can then have a unified view of all the contractors that they have, and you can do various things. That you can do bulk changes of their last date. You can bulk request entitlements for them. You can enable or disable them in bulk as well. You can also reassign them to a different manager if you want to. The use case there is there's some customers who have more of a call center type of setting where these people need to be reshuffled around, right? So that's a relatively new feature that's been introduced into this release. The other parts in the self-service portal are the dashboard that's there. So it's been broken out a little bit more. Early on, we had blocks that showed you what your inbox looked like. You could create requests for yourself, create requests for somebody else. In this version, we're kind of broken this out where you can see each type of request, how many of them that you have in your inbox. So to kind of give you a better sense of what your workload looks like and how it's broken out. And there's also easier to use options to be able to create new requests, to be able to terminate people. Again, you're only going to terminate things which are originating, which don't have a external source, right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense to start to kind of start stepping on the source attributes that you have there. Right? The other part that's been kind of improved is the delegated administration at an organization level. The use case there is that we have some customers who they have partners and vendors who need access to the IAM system, and what they do is they basically delegate the life cycle and a limited set of access control rights to their vendors or their partners, and so this kind of offloads some of the activities from the main corporation, right? And so in that respect, the UI has been improved to kind of better define what you can access in terms of not just your own users, but the entitlements that you can work with, and kind of carve things out a little bit. So it's almost like having a mini tenant within your tenant, right? There's also in the self-service catalog now supports a notion of being able to kind of deep link into the catalog. Okay, so there's a question about can you explain more on the contractor management in the service portal? I can. You just want to add a little bit more about where you want me to go with that, because I think I kind of created a little bit of an overview, and just want to make sure that I go into the direction that you're looking for. Okay. The other improvements on the authentication, there's some small improvements here. So one is there's a mobile app now to do a push notification on iOS and Android. There's support for knowledge questions. So the knowledge questions can be used to do things like you've got MFA turned on, but maybe you forgot your device. You still need to log in, and now you have a fallback where you can use these questions and you can answer them in that respect, right? The other things is some operational improvements that we've made. So one of the things that always happens is when we're testing, some of our customers don't have non-production systems for their end systems, right? So you have an AD or you have an Azure AD, but you don't have a non-prod tenant. Right. So, and now here we are, doing all this user lifecycle management. And if there's mistakes in there's a potential to basically, blow up your world. Right. And some of, the people on the call today know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of what can happen if there's a mistake there. So what we did was we added a simulation mode where basically any connector that's there, instead of writing to the target system, it basically writes to the OpenIM audit logs. And so you can see all the data that OpenIM should be sending as part of a request. And that way you have a way of kind of validating that the information looks correct before we actually start working with a live system. We also did the same thing with emails, because that's another area where we need to kind of test the notifications before we go live. And when these emails have mistakes or they potentially going to the wrong person, it just causes a lot more grief, in terms of kind of dealing with the end users, right? That being said, on the architectural side, there were a number of improvements. So for our customers who are kind of deploying on-prem and they're using RPM deployments, the HA capabilities have been greatly improved in this this release. So basically, we introduced HA proxy into the architecture. And so if any component on any node goes down, it will fail over to the nodes on the other components. There's a dashboard where you can see the health of the different components or something is failing. So there's just a lot better control over that. The synchronization performance has also been improved quite a bit. Yeah, so that there's some large improvements there. The audit logging that went with it was also improved. For customers who are using a Kubernetes type of deployment, we upgraded to support Kubernetes 1.23. And the reason for 1.23 versus other releases is that it was the latest minimum version that the cloud platforms provide. So there's a discrepancy between what Azure supports, what AWS supports. and we could only support the oldest version, which one of these, which these guys support, right? So it's hard because there are, capability differences between there, but that's what we support now. We support OpenShift now as well. And so more and more customers are starting to use OpenShift. And so there is out-of-the-box support for it. And for our customers who are using Rancher, there is documentation and Terraform scripts to help with that as well. There is one last feature, which is more of a technology preview, because it's not fully baked just yet, but it's the Microsoft Teams integration. So all of your request approval stuff, instead of having to go into into the self-service portal to be able to do request approvals or to approve from email, you can approve directly from your Teams client. And I think for end users, it's fairly convenient. It's basically, it's a IAM app that's always open, and it's one click to approve or reject. Okay. So going back to the question on contractor management. So the question was, what features are introduced? So basically, we can kind of summarize it in this way. One is managers can see all of the contractors that report to them in one view. This is in the self-service portal, where currently there's a menu option called, My Direct Reports. So they'll be able to see all the contractors there as well. From that, they can change, they can enable, disable their contractors in bulk or one at a time. There's the ability to extend or change their last date. So you can extend it, shorten it, whatever you like. You can reassign the managers there as well. You can also bulk assign entitlements to them as well. So I think off the top of my head, I think those are the features which are in the contractor management part. Okay. Next slide. So we're going to jump into the demo now. What we're going to do for this part is we're going to basically start with bulk creating a few users. There's a slightly different workflow here, and in some of our customers, they want to have some onboarding activities which are part of the new hire process. So these activities could include things like asking for laptops or phones or badges to be created. These requests would normally go to the service desk, and they would take care of them. So we're basically adding some capability here where, again, this is entirely optional, where we can have a form in OpenIM, which a manager goes in and fills out, and it will feed into that service desk to be able to automate this capability. We'll then have the employee log in and go through that process, go through a multi-step approval, and then we will look at some self-service features and do an access certification as well. Okay. All right. So let's get this out of the way. And so let's go into our web console. And in this case, we have MFA turned on the web console. So it's going to send me a token by email. And while it's doing that, let me go in. So in the admin interface, there are a few things that we set up. So first thing is we have some connectors to target systems, right? And so again, for folks who are new to this, there's two menu options, which can be sometimes a little bit misleading around this. So connectors refers to the connectors, the actual piece of software, which is used to talk to a target system. And here, all we're really doing is registering them and linking them to the message queue. So all the connectors communicate with OpenIM, the core system, through there's an internal message bus. And it gives us some flexibility where the connectors can be moved around. So you can have your connectors in different networks and kind of still talk back to the same OpenIM instance. Okay. And the next thing is we have this thing called a managed system. And the managed system is really your endpoint. It's the configuration that talks to a specific instance of your application. So you'll see that there is a few connections in place, like for Azure, for AWS, and for AD. And you'll see that they're in green. So there's a health check that's going on, and it's making sure that the connector is active. Um, the health check part has been improved in the sense that now there are notifications that go out if the connector is down, and it was a notification that will go out if the connection is restored, right? So it's a little bit better loop there. And then what we did was once we have these applications tied together, is we have some business rules, and these business rules are kind of defining your birthright access. So if I look at, say, a rule which is called developer, this is kind of a nonsensical rule. It only has a simple thing that says, if my title is developer, then I'm going to execute this, block of conditions, right? And when the title stops being true, then I'm going to take it away. So this part here in real life, it would be a lot more elaborate. It might say something like, if my job code is in a certain range and maybe I'm in a certain part of the country or or in some division, then I'm going to get these, things, right? And then the actual detail is developed down here where we have, a set of blocks, right? It says, if it doesn't match, then, put me in all these groups, give me these access. Now, these rules there's other things we can do here besides just grant entitlement. So we can do things like putting them in a new group, organizations, execute a script. We can call a workflow. This was kind of a first step towards reducing the amount of Groovy scripting that people had to do, and kind of start saving a little bit of time. And with each release that we do, we're going to start going more and more towards a low code, no code type of a model. The Groovy scripting will always be there as a fallback, because there is a certain amount of power that comes with it. But for day-to-day stuff, going through a simpler model will allow more people to be able to use this with less effort, right? So let's come back to our CSV file, and I'm going to go make a couple of changes here. Maybe not. So let's just update these values. We'll just do this on the fly real quick. Make these things unique. And we have an employee ID, which is going to be now the contents of this file, obviously, is defined by you. So let's load this file and we can go to synchronization for that. And we have a target here for our CSV file. Now, in this demo, I'm uploading this CSV file, but in real life, you would have a process that is either grabbing a file from some network drive, or it's going up against your target system and pulling the information through the connectors, right? And here we can use the synchronization capability for, really a number of things. It can be to bring in users. It can also be to import in, other data that you have and bring it into OpenIM. And we can define if it's going to be done at a specific time, or you want a regular set a cycle, to go through. But so let's, pull this in. And why is this not? Let's see if it actually saved. That timestamp isn't looking really great. Oh, that looks fine. All right. So I'm going to do a sync now, and this will, get the process started. It will do a couple of things at this point. It will create the users in OpenIM. It will provision them into target systems. It will send a notification to the new person that they're coming on with an activation link, but it will also send the manager a link to kind of get started. So Here we see the activation link, and we'll use that in a second. And the manager got a link to complete their onboarding, right? So at this point, let's log out of this. And we'll just go through. So it's going to take me to the onboarding form. And again, this is based on a template. So here I can pick, what I want, right? And in your environment, this obviously would be a lot more elaborate with some, real information that we want. And once I fill that in, it's going to say, go ahead, the workflow has been started, and it's going to, forward that message to the appropriate party, right? So assuming that that part's done, let's log in as the new user for the first time. And that's for the user that we were working with. So this is the password is being validated against the password policy, and if that matches, it's going to update it both in OpenIM and also in your target system. So if we're using, let's see, just grab this ID. So I'm going to get an unauthorized access because I've got the wrong URL in here, because I've got too many tabs open, and let's go to the right place. So from here, I can go ahead and create a request for myself. And so you'll see that there's a couple of new options here. There's an approval dashboard. So let's, we'll come back to that in a second. Sorry, the wrong link. I'm going to create a request for myself. And here I'm going to go to the catalog, and I'm going to pick, so the next thing here is we're on this column here, on this view here. This is the catalog of all the entitlements for this particular application, which is AD. There is an option here for a max duration. So if this is defined, then the system will enforce a maximum amount of time that you can ask for a certain resource. And the idea is that certain, entitlements can be a little bit more sensitive than others, and we don't want to allow the possibility of there being a longer-term access, right? So in this case, let's see, I'm going to go pick a couple of different entitlements, and it's in the cart. I can define how long I want something for. And so let's say I want it for, say 3 days, and I want it from tomorrow or well, that's good. All right. Beauty of a live demo. And then we have the forms that, again, these are, defined by you. And if all of this looks okay, it's going to go ahead and submit this request. And it's going to go through the approval flow at this point. And the manager will get a notification. And at this point, it can, we can approve this from the OpenIM self-service portal. We can go to the email notifications, or we can go to the Teams app, right? So in this case, let's just do it from the OpenIM interface. So here, again, I can go, look at the inbox in a few different ways. The approval dashboard shows me everything that I have on my plate. So I can break it up. So the view inbox, this is everything that I have. The access requests, these are like the activity that I just put in just now. And then there are other, types of workflows that can be running around at the same time. So in this case, I'm just going to go pull from here, and let's go to the end, and I'll see, the request for Elmer Fudd, and so I can go here, right? There's an option here to see more. This is, it was kind of like a quick way to add custom attributes that you may want to see on this form, which are not part of the default template. And here you can also approve, reject, any, you can approve the whole thing, you can reject the whole thing, you can approve part of it as well. For some reason, if I'm busy or I'm not the right person, I can delegate this to someone else if I want to. There's also a out of office delegation. So any requests that come in, they can be rerouted to whoever is basically designated at as your out of office delegate. For C-level executives who don't like doing any of this stuff, we can have a permanent delegate for them, and this way there's nothing to actually set up. It just will reroute to them automatically. So let's approve this. And there's a 2-level approval flow here. So we'll quickly go through and sign in as the other, approver. Nope, this is the security manager. Again, same drill. And again, if this looks okay, we can see that, who completed. If there are any comments, it would have been here as well, any attachments. And at this point, since there is a connector for this application, it will basically go ahead and create that access. And it may take a second or two at that point. Okay. So at this point, last thing on the demo is the access certification. So there's a question here. With contractor accounts, how extensible is a built-in repository, limitation on attributes? Okay, good question. So I'm going to answer that in a slightly roundabout way. So within OpenIAM, all your core objects, users, and all your entitlements, there's a notion of a metadata type. And in that metadata type, you can define the custom attributes that you want. So in that respect, you can have as many custom attributes as you like on a given object. That's true for users. It's true for groups, roles, resources, and organizations as well. And we can use those attributes on the forms as well. And so let me actually show you that real quick. And of course, it's going to ask send me a token again. So sorry about that. And this applies not just to contractor accounts, it applies to employees. You can create service accounts as well. You can use the metadata types to create your own types of accounts that you can have. So you'll see on this menu option here, there's a notion of custom fields. And so I can create new fields. And the way to go about it, you give it a name, you give it a type, is it required, editable, so on and so forth, right? And when you put it on the template, you can also define validation rules there as well. Okay. Going back to the access certification, let's create a new campaign. And let's see, we'll create a campaign and let's call it, And so here we can pick the type of certifications. It's either going to be a user-based certification, and what this means is that it's going to be you can review the selected population of users and all the access that they have. And application really means it's an entitlement-based review. So let's say I want to do this quarterly, and I want to assign a UAR manager. And a UAR manager is the person who's going to be reviewing this and having this oversight over the campaign. And it's most likely the person who's working with the auditors. So at this point, let's pick a couple of applications. Let's say maybe I'm going to pick my AWS account, and maybe I'm going to pick AD. And the next thing is I'm going to go define some users. So I can, or the entitlements. So here, let's say I want to pick these two entitlements. So you'll see that in AWS, we used our connector earlier on to import all the entitlements, the policies which are there, and the description of them. So we're kind of populating the catalog, from there. And then in AD, let's say we want to do we'll pick the domain admins and the domain controllers as the two things that we want to certify. And then we can pick our flow of the review. And so let's say the user supervisor is the first one. And we pick the email template. And then we can say maybe the entitlement owner is the next reviewer. Okay. I can also define an escalation path here in terms of who it should go to. So if people aren't doing these things, which they usually don't like to, we can hound them with some reminders, and then we can escalate it to whoever is the right person to basically encourage them to get things done on time. Okay. And so if this all looks okay, I can save the campaign, and then I can kick this off and go ahead and do an execute now. So at this point, it's going to, calculate the campaign, and I'll see the results. So there's only 4 people in this, and it shows who it went to, right? So at this point, let's log in as the first, approver. So I can go to user access reviews, and here's so this is a dashboard of all the campaigns that I've got running, and at a certain time, and I can open this up and I can see where each person is. So I can, if I want to, review them one by one, and I can add comments. I can compare. A easier way of doing this would be to go to the pivot view. And here we can see all of the users and their access, which we need to review in one place. And then I can just go through and say, well, no, I'm going to revoke that. This one looks okay. This is not okay, and this one is fine. Right. And at this point, I'll hit process the page. It will complete it. And I'll go to the next person. If there are different people, it will then split the workflow will basically split. It will go to the appropriate people. And I can keep track of things from here on the dashboard. Also, if I want to, I can delegate I can reassign these things. So maybe if Jack is away, I can also send a message to kind of give kind of remind them that we're kind of running out of time. And so different ways of kind of handling it from here. Okay, that's it for the demo. I didn't go through every last capability. I wanted to also spend some time talking about what we're working on next, and go from there. Okay. So in terms of our roadmap going forward, and I'm only focusing on what we're doing over the next 4 or 5 months, I can share the 2-year roadmap for anybody who wants afterwards. But so there's going to be 2 releases. So the next one is going to be 4215, and this is really another minor release. And the goal is basically any bug fixes that come up or any issues that come up, and small improvements which are needed. So things that really can't wait. And so there's always going to be point releases going on, and basically to support our customers and partners. So that's a small release that's going to be coming up in a couple of months. The 4.2.2 release is what we kind of are planning for basically the May timeframe. This has been in the works for a little over a year already, and there are a number of improvements in it. So with each iteration, each major release is always an architectural improvement. We're trying to improve performance and scalability. So in this case, the framework is actually a little bit lighter than previous versions, and the performance is better. There's also a complete upgrade of the internal stack. So for our customers who we're working with, in a SaaS environment, it doesn't really affect them. For our customers who are using the on-prem, this will matter. The other part is support for a third-party vault. So we've had some requests where customers want to use an existing vault, like say CyberArk, and so this will allow us to kind of plug in a third-party vault if we want to. The authentication capability got a big upgrade in this release. So the first thing was we introduced machine learning into the framework. And the idea there was to be able to analyze behavioral patterns and to do more complex adaptive auth type of activities. There's also capabilities here to do device level verification. So we have some customers where they want to make sure that their employees are using their corporate machines that were assigned to them. So if they're working from home, so in this case, we have the ability to read the serial number off of a machine and validate that during the authentication process, right? So kind of in a work from home or a remote scenario to be able to support those patterns. There's true passwordless authentication is supported now in this release. The mobile app, which did push notification, will be expanded out to the desktop. There are customers who want to have those notifications coming on their desktop, so that was added. The credential provider got expanded so that to use the adaptive auth framework, so we can do passwordless authentication for signing into Windows and Mac. A lot of our customers also want to be able to use OpenIM to do machine authentication, so radius authentication was added in. It was actually introduced a couple of releases ago when we added a plugin for free radius, but this is just getting built out. And there's also integration with the identity proofing service, which was also introduced in this release. A new feature here is the analytics. So this is going to be evolving over the next few releases, but the first iteration of it is going to be a dashboard, which is kind of linked to it's a descriptive analytics model, where we're going to be looking at the things like your authentication, your dormant accounts, your orphaned accounts, privileged, and the status of those. The self-service portal user interface got overhauled. I think some of you know that we've been kind of moving away from the old framework that we had to a more modern framework. So the entire self-service interface now is in React, and it's been refactored. So hopefully it's a little bit easier to use and more modern in its appearance. A lot of you have also asked us about being able to create your own reports. So there is a browser-based report builder in this release. Again, I think it will evolve over time, but at least you won't be dependent on scripting or dependent on us to kind of provide new reports for you. The mail template editor was also improved, so it's got a little bit more of a drag and drop interface. And for our customers who are outside of the US, where they need to support multiple languages, the templates are more friendly for supporting a multi-language environment. Okay. On the workforce identity side, the segregation of duties was introduced in the last release, but it's been kind of overhauled, and it's a much more complete solution now. Again, it will keep evolving, but it's more of a UI-based model now, where you can define your toxic access rules, and also be able to highlight them through the access request model, through access certification and reports, to know when we have these violations. Right. In access certification, we kind of improved this in a couple of different ways. So one is there's the support for a role-based certification, so we can certify roles and the configuration that's there. Obviously, the SOD part has been integrated into this as well. And the other part is that we're now keeping a snapshot of a person's access. So this way, from campaign to campaign, we can see what changed, and we can highlight those changes, and hopefully that should reduce a significant amount of time for the end user. There are tools to be able to migrate from one configuration. So this has always been a little bit of a sore spot, where it's just the effort to go from, say, a lower environment to production has always been a little bit of a lot more work than we really want. So there are now tools to be able to export those scripts and any configurations, and to be able to move them from non-prod to prod. And also to be able to refresh lower environments from production, because that does need to happen from time to time. And again, we want this to be simple, where anybody can do this. It doesn't need to have deep knowledge of how OpenIM works, right? The Microsoft Teams integration that becomes mainstream in this release, and the idea is that we'll be adding support for Slack in a follow-up release as well. The synchronization capability, right now there's a lot of dependency on scripting. It's great for people who are comfortable with it, not so great for people who need to learn it. So there'll be an option there now where we can define mapping and rules and be able to import data in. So hopefully you don't need to go to GroovyScript all the time. There's also a plugin for developing new connectors. So you can use Eclipse, which is a free IDE, and you can generate new connectors from it and be able to use the SDK to kind of, today you can do that, following the examples. It's not very hard, but I think this makes it a little bit easier, and it also it expands the capabilities to a broader range of people, I think, in this scenario. Okay. On the customer IAM side, we added consent management to the framework. So this is both in terms of managing consent, integrating it with the partner applications, and also any agreements that would go. So again, I think this feature will evolve over time, but there's a fairly comprehensive consent management solution that's there now. We on the federation side, we added the ability to do to kind of discover IDPs. And this is for customers which have geographically, they're multiple parts of the organization in different regions, and sometimes there's a group in the U.S. which has their own IDP. There's a group in Europe which has another one, and everybody doesn't need access to everything. So this allows us to kind of flow back and forth in a more seamless kind of way, right? The other thing is, again, this for some customers, this was a requirement where OpenIM can act as a SCIM server. What I mean by that is that there's a standard called SCIM, which gives us a uniform way to be able to provision and deprovision. So we've had a SCIM connector in OpenIM for more than 2 years. So any SCIM target, like say Slack or Atlassian's cloud platform, we can configure those pretty easily. But there are environments where people want to be able to provision into OpenIM itself, and they want to be able to use a SCIM interface, which you can configure from the other applications. So this will be something that they can configure again through the UI. And there's a mobile app SDK for iOS and Android. So we're seeing a growing number of customers where they're embedding or they're building applications and they want to embed identity into them. And this will basically reduce the effort to be able to do that. Okay. And the last part is that that there be a basic PAM capability that we introduced. And the idea is that we've always been a unified platform. The idea is to kind of be a fully converged platform where there's workforce identity, web access management, customer IAM, and privilege access all on the same platform. And obviously people can choose as they desire. So in the PAM capability, there'll be the account lifecycle management part, right? Your discovery of accounts, your provision and deprovision. Some of this foundation is already there. So we really are kind of piggybacking off of capability, which has already been in the workforce side. So there's really not a lot of new development here, right? What is new are the SSO capabilities to Linux and Windows servers. So to kind of have your dashboard where you can SSO into any Linux or Windows server, be able to turn on have a session recording, so you can see what was done on a given session, have playback capability if you need to go back. There's also the ability to invite other people to observe what's going on. So maybe there's a sensitive activity and you just want to have a second set of eyes. So in addition to the recording, you can have someone real time watching what's going on at that point, right? And obviously the secrets vault where we keep everything. And this is really an extension of the vault that's already used in OpenIM today, right? So it's not really creating a new capability, but it's just more of a UI to kind of wrap around it. Right? That's it for our review of the webinar. And so it's a question here for Pam: do you have self-service, just-in-time capability for privileged accounts? Absolutely. So and this is actually there today, even on the workforce side. You can use it to be able to create privileged accounts for a limited amount of time and have that access taken away. So the idea is here is just going to be spelled out a little bit better so that it can be used in a PAM setting. Again, if you have any questions, this is what we had planned for the session today. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And again, thank you everybody for your time. Okay, so there's a question about business rules engine, and there's on the points that we want. They wonder if there's ability to express algebraic expressions of and or not. And another doubt is about the performance, what kind of benchmarks there are. It's a good question. So the and or capabilities are there today. I'm not sure if we need to go a little bit deeper into them. We can certainly check and we can communicate, to discuss this offline. And if we need to go deeper, we can certainly, work that in. And I can get back to you about the performance. So it's a good question because we also have some large deployments going on where there's a large number of users. And so I think it might be mutually beneficial to kind of, to do some metrics on it. Yeah. So the question is, when will the release and documentation be available? So the release for 4214 will be available at the end of next week. The docs should be available at the same time. The 422 release, we're targeting sometime in May, and obviously docs will be ready for that as well. One of the things that would be there along with the docs is also documentation on how to do upgrades from previous releases. I know this has been painful for a lot of folks who've been working with OpenIM for a long time. That the upgrades are never as easy as can be, but these things should be documented better. And in fact, even the RPM release that will be out for 4214 has the ability to do upgrades from 4212 and 4213. So hopefully, as time goes on, this will start making your life a little bit easier. Is there a possibility to vault passwords for shared accounts, for example, save credentials for social media? It's a good question. In the PAM module, for sure, you can do that. In the current release, I'd have to give it some thought in terms of what's the best way to kind of design that. I think there's a way, but yeah, I just need to give it a little bit of thought. But definitely in the 422 release, you can do that for sure. There is a notion of a service account that's maintained in the vault, and there is an owner that's there, but I think it's an individual owner that it's assigned to and not a group. So it may need to be designed a little bit differently. Any other questions? If not, I think there's one more. Yep. How does patching and installation work? I see that it's enterprise version of Kubernetes and okay, it's a good question. So patching and installation for in a Kubernetes environment is fairly easy. And I guess easy is relative because Kubernetes is not that easy to start with. But there are Terraform scripts for Azure, AWS, and Google, which you can use to simplify the installation and upgrade process. There are Helm charts which are available if you have a private deployment. Even for Rancher, I think that you can use the Terraform scripts to be able to simplify your work. Docker Swarm installations upgrades are fairly easy. My only caveat is that if you're using Docker Swarm for a POC or a small deployment, that's fine. We strongly recommend against using Docker Swarm in a production setting, just because it's very difficult to do high availability with some of the components which are part of the stack. And we have at least one customer who's made a mess out of their environment by going down that path, despite the fact that we said they really shouldn't. Okay, I don't think that there are any more questions. Thank you everybody for your time. I guess one more question. What is the target size number of identities that OpenIM is set to manage? Will this scale to handle thousands of different developer roles? So the out-of-the-box configuration is limited. Is the sizing on the infrastructure components is not meant for a very large deployment, right? So there's going to be, if you're going to put it into a larger deployment, then we need to adjust the sizing, right, of some of the components, and mainly Redis, Elasticsearch, RabbitMQ, the amount of memory that they have. In terms of scalability, we do have some large deployments. I think our largest deployment, which is a hybrid, is about 80,000 employees and contractors and about 8 million external users on one platform. There's another one for a telco, which is about 20 million users. And there's a larger government deployment coming up. So the scale that you're describing is absolutely within the realm of what we can do. Even for the entitlements, we've seen customers who have basically defined a role for every single user that they had, and in the process, they had over 100,000 entitlements. So not the right way of designing this, but again, they did it that way, and we supported it. Yeah. Okay. Again, thanks everybody for your time today. We can close the call. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to drop us a note. I'm more than happy to answer. Okay. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.